Good afternoon, Bilbao, and to cities of the world joining us online. Hello, or as we say where I'm from, Assalamu alaikum. I come from the city of Dubai, a city from a country that more than 200 nationalities call home. We have a saying that we use to describe ourselves back in Dubai that translates roughly into, we don't see ourselves as a city within the world, but we see the world within our city. And so with that embraceness of diversity, embraceness of global presence, when we come to reflect on what it means to think about what the world's next cities will look like, when we start to think about how do we start to build for the world, by the world, how do we start to redefine what it means to be economically prosperous for people and planet, we bring a whole different perspective to how we even start these conversations. I'll be walking you through 4 main lenses that the Expo City Dubai, as part of Dubai's new Center of Urban Development, brings to the table and invites you to test us, ask us questions, and look at how this can apply to how we generally start to address the question of the world's next cities. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a little bit more context to Dubai. I wanted to layer into what some of you might think you know about Dubai and just give you a taste of how we see ourselves in the world. Can I have a clicker? Where we are classically is Dubai has historically been a crossroads of civilization. It has traditionally been a connecting point between East and West. It was a fundamental entry point to trade routes from across Asia into the other part of the world. And where we find ourselves today, thank you. Where we find ourselves right now is that we are still more connected than ever. Partly because of how we chose to design to maintain ourselves as connectors of the world, partly because of our geographic location, partly because of how we see ourselves as a vital link to how we continue to talk about global cities. We also live in the reality that is common to the region we are in. We are a city of the global south. And fundamentally, we are facing the same challenge, or the same trend, I would say, of massive growth and rapid urbanization. Dubai's population is expected to grow by 75% in the next 20 years. And that's just for people living in the city. We anticipate that by 2040, in addition to this population growth, we will have close to almost 1 million visitors on a daily basis into the city. And so what this presents to us in Dubai is an opportunity for us to rethink as we grow. This is a chance for us to reconsider what we mean by prosperity. How do we redefine prosperity? Charles, you spoke yesterday about the need to rethink GDP and think beyond prosperity as an economic indicator, but prosperity as a social, economic, and environmental measure for how well we're doing within our cities and how we reinvest our economic return into these intangible layers and into the balance of how we expand as cities around the world. That brings us to Expo City Dubai. What Expo City Dubai is an example of how Dubai is choosing to redefine a new future for sustainable urban growth. We are part of the new Dubai 2040 master plan, and we refer to ourselves in many ways the new center of Dubai's future, because this is the cornerstone of how Dubai is seeking to expand the future, not just expand the horizon of the city, but also redefine what it means to rebuild or to build the new version of the city that is absolutely anchored in green, human-centric, and entirely connected. Expo City is slightly interesting, and I wanted to walk you through its timeline for 3 main reasons. Partly because the story is slightly unique. Some of you in the room have been part of the story since its inception. Hi, Larry. Hi, Farah. And it's also, towards the end, you'll understand why the journey is important and understanding why this is an interesting case of how we redefine urban sustainable development. The Expo City Dubai was the place that hosted Expo 2020. To those of you who might not know, this was the first World Expo that was ever hosted in the Middle East. It was also the first World Expo that offered every single participating country a pavilion in order to be able to present their stories on a global platform. We welcomed 24 individual visitors across the 6-month timeline of the event, and we engaged 190 plus countries and even more international organizations around developing a thought leadership program that responds to our collective global challenges. And the thought leadership program is called the Program for People and Planet, that lives on today, an active community of more than 80,000 members that are connected up until today. So what we've done with the World Expo is we've established ourselves as a credible, truly global platform for purpose-driven conversation. So after the Expo concluded, we were the most natural home for the world's largest convening of world leaders around our most critical climate action conversations. We hosted COP28 in 2023, and what we were able to do is recreate the power of convening and recreate and redefine what it means to convene for purpose. We were the platform for the launch of the UAE Consensus, a landmark COP28 outcome. It was the first time in the history of COPs that was able to get all parties to agree to a commitment to move permanently away from fossil fuels to keep us on track to our 1.5-degree target. And so after COP, we go back to what we were always intended to be. We are a living, breathing city that is looking to redefine how we build for wellness, how we build for business, how we build for families, and how we build for culture and art. I'm just going to take a moment to stop here as well, because the journey was something I wanted to highlight, because this was always the end game in how we thought about designing the place. We often describe Expo City Dubai as the place that happened to host the world convenings, but we were always designing towards what would become a thriving business district, a thriving hub for creative economy, and a thriving new standard of how we build cities that are anchored in greener and higher standards of sustainability. This addresses what we heard yesterday about long-termism. So long-termism is in our DNA, very much the same way that international cooperation is rooted in who we are and how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive our role in the world. With this context about Dubai, I wanted to layer in one more very fundamental consideration before we start to talk about our lens around how we should start to think about the world's next cities, or how we need to design for the world's next cities. And that's the fundamental fact that we are a city of the Global South, and the cities of the Global South see us as peers, as a beacon, as a connector, but also as a source of inspiration at times. What we find to be critical to the conversations around the future of cities, or the world's next cities and how we define them, is that they need to take place with and at where the world's next cities are going to emerge. 9 out of 10 top countries with the most new cities around the world are in the Miasa region. We're talking Rwanda, Egypt, Nigeria, Iraq, Morocco, and Kuwait. And so what that means, it's fundamental for us when we talk about the world's next cities, that we not only include and we actively engage and we proactively ensure representation. I want to refer to what our colleague today, Antonio, said earlier. It's not just about representation, it's about informing the conversations, because they are going to be the shape of the future of our cities. And that's where just fundamental the density of the world's next megacities are going to be. And so we invite this new lens to regional representation around the definition of the world's next cities. I'm now going to walk you through the 4 lenses that we've identified, that we continue to explore, that we continue to use as a lens to ask questions and to continue to develop frameworks through which we start to explore. But for us, when it comes to how do we define fundamentally what a World Next City is, it's about being a center of action, a center that convenes leaders across sectors, a center of action that fundamentally fosters dialogue, that is anchored in practical optimism, action-oriented outcome, and absolutely fundamentally anchored in value chain inclusivity. When we talk about city-to-city learning and city-to-city convenings, it's really about re-exploring how we redefine the share and exchange of knowledge in a way that is very contextual, that is respectful of context, that is sensitive to our unique experiences. And so we are conscious of this incredibly evident space that we found about the lack of convening for cities of the Global South in the Global South. And so the Cities in Action Forum, which we hosted the inaugural version of earlier this year, was our response to that. Our response to us knowing that we need to do better because we're all in this together from a regional perspective. But we cannot forget the importance of global learnings either. We are still global in nature. And so it's almost that triangulation of city-to-city learning on a regional perspective, but city-to-city sharing through a global perspective as well. And that's why we continuously seek to host the world-class convenings of cities. We are hosting the Asia-Pacific Cities and Mayors Forum in October 2025. So we're going back to the roots of who we are, which is a place that reconnects the world and reconnects the city and redefines what it means to convene on a global scale. The second lens through which we see how cities of the future will take shape is that we fundamentally believe that they will need to be innovation hubs. Innovation hubs that are absolutely anchored in helping us find new ideas to address our very own urban challenges. So the solutions we're seeking are within our own ecosystems and are within our own places and within our own communities. We just have to tap into them. There are a couple of lenses that there are a couple of elements that we experimented with that we find help us activate a city as an innovation hub, because it's easy to say we want to innovate, but it's the tools that you use and understanding that the tools are not a copy-paste, but rather an extension of who you are and the personality of the city that you want to be. But take this as an exploration that we're sharing with you. Fundamentally, what we are trying to say here is a mindset, an invitation for innovators around the world. Give them the space to test, enable them to fail, and enable them to rise back up and build on their learnings. And that's what we do with our Urban Lab, for example. The Urban Lab is an active program where we invite and we call on all innovators from all around the world to help us find the type of solutions that address the specific challenges that we've identified are important for our city. So that level of specificity as well is what would help us channel an innovation that's actually of value and brings in the type of impact we would want. The second layer is to activating an innovation hub within a city is a regulatory adaptability and agility. We have to be able to create policy that is proactive to challenges, that addresses market needs, but is also creative in its ability to identify white spaces. How do you design to incentivize and bring in the type of key players that you want to be part of this innovation hub that are going to propel it and going to switch on that missing link to create the type of trickle-down effect that you're looking for? And that's what we have with the authority that we've established. It continues to operate as a policy sandbox. We test, we hear, we're nimble. What do SMEs face? How do SMEs face challenges? Are the challenges a regulatory one? Can we make them a regulatory one so that we can fix it? Third, not to state the obvious, but when we're talking about innovation hubs, we have to fundamentally understand we are saying that we are catalyzing innovation from everywhere and by anyone. The third lens of what we want to bring to the table in terms of defining the world's next cities is that we believe the cities of the future must become prosperous and nature-positive systems that enable planetary solutions. And why is that? It's because cities, and particularly cities in the Global South, are in the eye of the climate crisis. And we have an imperative to choose to see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to see how we can shape our own sustainable future, and now is the time for visionary plans, bold ideas, and big action. Just by show of hands, how many of you come from a city that registered its highest record temperature this year? Us too. But we've been building in extreme heat for a very, very long time. So if you want to learn how to build for 50 degrees Celsius, if you want to understand how we constantly look at both technology and passive indigenous ways of doing things, come talk to us. A lot of the challenges that the Global South faces in terms of the climate change impact will be addressed by the solutions that the cities of the Global South themselves have the capacity to develop and scale and share with the world. The way we approach identifying these solutions and scaling solutions is an ecosystems approach. And I'll explain what I mean by an ecosystems approach, or how we develop an ecosystems approach. It basically seeks to say we have to do this differently. We have to explore and fundamentally redefine what we know works because we have no other choice. We do this through 4 ways that we continue to test and we continue to iterate and we continue to learn from the world and help shape, hopefully, how the rest of the world also looks at what we mean by activating an ecosystem for planetary solutions. First is looking at a platform for new forms of partnerships, so redefining, completely reinterpreting what SDG 17 means. We are looking at how do we mobilize global leadership, how do we catalyze and scale action, and how do we leverage stories to make sure the voices of the unheard is amplified, but also tell stories that inspire and pull at the heartstrings. The second approach to how do you enable an ecosystem approach to identifying solution is build your own blueprint. Identify what you want to be as your best-in-class example of where you want to be. Use it, leverage it as a testing ground for yourself. Invite others to come and leverage it and test it for you. This is in many ways what Terra, our permanent sustainability exhibition, is. It really is a catalyst for rethinking. It sits at the intersection of how architecture can build in harmony with the natural environment. Third is, we know these solutions exist. It's just a matter of tapping into them. It's a matter of finding them, knowing where to find them, but also supporting them to make sure that they understand what it'll take for them to scale. So this has been a part of how we've approached the Innovators program more broadly. During Expo 20, actually it predated Expo 2020. This is something that we've done because we've decided this is who we are as a city. We care about solutions that come from anywhere and everywhere and anyone. So the Expo Live program, which now lives in its new brand, skin, I would say, is the Expo City Dubai Foundation. It made it a mission to identify the type of impact or the type of projects that are not necessarily large in scale, but have the ability to be exponential in how it touches lives and how it reaches lives. And they had a particular focus on youth because naturally that's what we've been discussing as well yesterday. And I actually know that we have a couple of global innovators, or GIs as we like to call them, in this very room. So I don't know if Leader of Light is here, but shout out to Leader of Light. We are very proud of you. And if you guys didn't know, Leader of Light was one of the shortlisted awardees for the Bay Awards. So this community, if you're in it for life. And we mean this in the most positive and most encouraging way. We are proud of you, and we hope that you continue to scale. With or without us, we want to see you flourish. And lastly, the last pillar of how we approach ecosystem enablement is actively seeking like-mindedness, looking for global partners. We don't have to house an idea within the parameters of our city. We don't have to own it. But if there's an opportunity for us to cross-amplify and cross-pollinate, we do. An example of how we have approached this was even before the formation of the formal Expo 2020 site. We were a founding partner of the Earthshot Prize that was established by His Highness the Prince of Wales. This brings me to our last lens, and I'll conclude here. And it's that the world's next cities really must be quality of life incubators, where people thrive in harmony with nature. And what that basically means is our built environment has to absolutely foster the ability for us to create social value. It's about a perpetual pursuit for how we redefine quality of life. We have to identify where we need to improve, because it's not a matter of going with what's existing. Where the standards don't exist, we create them. Where the standards are not enough and not comprehensive, we layer on top of them, so it becomes a holistic whole that satisfies all the different gaps that we've identified. And so what you see here is the new type of standards that we've identified for ourselves. In many ways, the previous standards we had were first of a kind in Miasa. But going back to how we started the very conversation here in Bilbao was, how do you constantly innovate? How do you constantly keep that desire or that tension for better and for more alive? So all of the 4 lenses that I ran through today are fundamentally underpinned by the desire to make sure that the cities, the world's next cities, are anchored in dignity for all. And the world's next cities work together. We've shared with you our perspective. I would love to hear more from you. I would love to hear your questions. I invite you to help us learn and help us identify how else we can change and improve some of the lenses we have. I'm here with my colleague Sheena. Sheena, do you want to just wave your hand so that we're visible? Please come and find us and grab us during the lunch or after lunch. And with that, I wanted to thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for having us.